Welcome, Deanna, to Sippin' Sunday, the podcast. I'm very excited to have you on. Let our listeners know what you are sipping on or what your favorite beverage is.
Well, my favorite beverage will always be any sort of flavored lemonade. So strawberry, raspberry, that's always go to. But today I am sipping on a new wine I got from up in
Ooh,
Gatlinburg. And it's actually like a creamy addition that we add to our coffee. And so it's
ooh.
definitely like an adult coffee for the day, to say the least.
Oh, what is the wine? What's the brand?
So it's called Elkmont,
Elk.
but it's actually a local winery here in Tennessee.
Gotcha. That sounds good. And then what's like the flavor? What do they name it
Yeah,
as?
is butter pecan is the option. So yeah,
Wow. Yeah,
it
no,
has
that sounds really
muscle.
good.
Yeah, it
That
was
sounds
definitely the go-to now.
that is good. And then have you mixed it with your coffee or it just
hmm
tastes like
Yeah, it's
a
like the perfect
wine and
creamer.
coffee. Wow. Like I think like Bailey's or Kahlua. Kahlua gives me a headache, but a wine,
hmm
wow.
Yep. It's definitely my go-to. I'm in love with it. I can't wait to get our next bottle. But yeah, we tried it up in here in Gatlinburg. I'm like 45 minutes away. So me, boyfriend, and bestie last weekend actually went up there and did different tastings. And
Yum.
so that's how they sold me.
Okay. I'm gonna look this up and do they ship?
I
I might
hope
have to make the
so.
trip to Tennessee.
Yeah, if not, I will make the trip for you.
Thank you. I am sipping water in my SpongeBob cup that I love so much.
Love it.
Just got this. But yes, I have some water today. And every guest that comes on, the next question I always ask them is at what age do you feel like you became an adult if you reached that age yet?
So I definitely feel like I reached it. I say that because I was confident when I saw that question. I'm like, oh yeah, 26. I just knew because 26 was when I stopped calling home for like the advice in my career.
Hmm.
I was ready to like make my own moves without having to second guess it. But also currently Panorama moved me back home. So I'm currently seeking the same mindset I was at 26. So
Okay.
26 is still like the true adulting. I feel like I was at my peak adulthood.
Okay. Gotcha. And when you moved back home during the pandemic, where were you living then?
Yeah, so I went back home with parents, but now I have transitioned to new boo in our place. So we'll level up as I've adulted
Gotcha.
since I moved back home.
Okay. And when you moved out the first time though, were you still living in Tennessee or you moved somewhere else?
Yeah, so Tennessee, born, raised, educated, and all the things at this point. So,
Gotcha. Okay. So you're
so yeah,
staying for a long
yeah.
time.
I moved to Middle Tennessee though, so I've was in Nashville for 9 years,
Okay.
and so that was definitely where my 20s was spent.
Gotcha. Okay. And remind me where you went to undergrad again?
Tennessee State University.
Gotcha. Okay. Yes. Tennessee. Anybody listen from Tennessee? Shout out to you all. Like I said, that's not a state I've been to yet, but maybe one day I will. You never
Soon
know.
enough. hmm
And now I
Maybe the
have a
wine
friend
will
there.
bring you.
Exactly. That's true. I will put it on the list for that. If I can find a good brunch, wine, and no brunch, yeah, brunch is probably the not the only thing that would draw me, but like a place I travel to has to have good brunch or like a winery
hmm
or just some type of activity that would draw me there if it's not a state that I would be like inclined to go to.
Totally get that. Yeah,
Yeah.
have the fun while you get there.
Exactly. Cause like I've been to Iowa and it's so funny because yesterday I think somebody asked me like what's a state or place I've been that like I didn't think I would go to, and Iowa was definitely up there. Would I go back to Iowa again? No. If somebody pays me to go to Iowa, I would consider it, but it's not like high on my list of places I need to go back because
Understood.
it was fun for what it
Did
was,
you go
but
during the cold weather?
no, it was a summer. So it was a June 2013. I went to Iowa.
Gotcha. Okay.
So yeah, it wasn't bad. Don't recommend, to put that on your travel bucket list, but it was fine.
Gotcha.
So, getting into our conversation of why you're here, why I reached out to you. You work in the finance world, your Instagram and your blog and your website and the things that you do are all around finances, which is the hottest topic that everybody has about adulting for sure, especially now with all the memes of like, we can't afford adult life, like, we're not making enough, people are getting laid off, like,
hmm
there's just a lot of things happening in the world. So can you just tell us, how did you learn about money and getting into like what you do now and just how that became a passion of yours?
So yeah, so it started early for me. I come from an entrepreneurial family, so it is definitely something I feel like I came out the womb knowing certain things. So I have a large gap between my siblings, so 6 and 8 years. So a lot of that allowed me to kind of learn from a distance. So when they were out doing babysitting, my dad would come pick them up, or afterwards, like my sister would babysit our neighborhood kids type thing. And the conversations afterwards were like, all right, how much you got paid? All right, did they need you next week? Certain things like that. Those were like just common conversations we had early on. And then also my family of entrepreneurs, we've done it all. So lawn care to cleaning up in apartments after people move out. My mom was in Princess House. I'm not sure if you're aware of that, but it's an older one. But it's like Avon, but it's more towards glassware. So our house was also full of glass. So as a young child, we learned how to negotiate also out of certain things. So I definitely think that was like a key element for me, as
Mhm.
well as having a black accountant for our family. I saw them come in, do our taxes season type thing, and it would all be handled from our living room. So I was sitting in those conversations then at like 6 and 8 years old. So that
Gotcha.
led me to when I had the opportunity in high school to take accounting, it was first nature, like, of course. So that was where it began in 11th grade, taking accounting. And also was in a business track for in my high school. So we had just different focus areas, I would say.
Mhm.
And so business has always been like key for me. And so I learned a lot of things before I even got to my collegiate area.
Gotcha. Okay. And that is like not abnormal. That's not, I mean, I guess it kind of is for a teen to be thinking about money and financing and all of that, because I just think about when I'm telling my students now, I'm like, I know that this might sound crazy to you, or it might sound like, why do I need to know about buying an apartment now? Or why do I need to know about buying a car now when I'm 16, 17? But I just hope that it comes in play and it's helpful for them later down the line,
Oh
because
yeah.
things are crazy.
Oh yeah.
And your siblings, they're older than you with the gap?
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay, gotcha. So yeah, you're watching them and then seeing what they're doing and from what your parents are displaying and how they're like asking you questions about things and having their own businesses. That's where you learn about finances and
Oh
thinking
yeah.
about it.
Yeah. And then also in high school, I had a co-op. So I was at school for half day, and then I was also at work for another half day for my senior
Yep.
year. So it
Yeah.
was definitely, we talked about those things. So tithing, putting 10% aside, certain things like that was definitely like normal in our household. My dad's a deacon. So those are things that's kind of like you can't just run from.
Even if you tried, it would be very difficult to do that. So that makes sense of how you got started. And then talk about a little bit like throughout college, what was your money management like? Because when I think to college, like I felt like I had no money, but I was doing so many things. And I feel like now I have less money, but I guess it's because I'm paying for more. And
Hmm.
in college, it's just very easy to not think about saving or not think about your future in finances, because you're like the here and now. Like, I'm just trying to have a good time. Like, I'm in college. Like, I don't need to think about this stuff. I'll think about it when I graduate. So, what
So,
did that look like for you?
so for me, I had a budget going into college. So it was
Good.
absolutely first nature. I had to actually create my own before going into college because my parents were paying out of pocket for college. And so that's where even my scholarship writing, I was doing that very heavily just because I knew it was going to come out of pocket. Um, and certain state things I just didn't have the GPA for. So it really just kind of was on my back. And so I had to get to it. So with that budget aspect, I couldn't really just maneuver like I feel like a lot of my classmates were. My
Yep.
freshman year, I got a refund and didn't tell my parents. Um, because
Oh,
it
God.
was like,
You see, that probably was crazy.
well, that was the thing. Like my dad was like, "How'd you blow through two, or I think it was $500?" So I didn't even get like a large refund like everybody else was doing around me. It was significant for like, of course, an 18-year-old. Um,
Yeah.
so it was literally spent on food and clothes. And my dad was like, "Okay, how show me how you spent this money." And that was the thing. I was able to show him in a budget. So like this is where the money went. And I literally could not call home to ask for money unless I showed my budget. So those are things that definitely like take took key elements that
Yeah.
play into now that I have to like double check myself before going to take a loan out or going to do certain things. I've literally never had to because of I've become my own ATM in a sense.
Yeah. No, and I think the earlier you start, it is better, and you can get your finances in order for sure as an adult, but it does become harder when you don't have these practices or mindset ahead of time. And or the other side of adulting is like if something comes up that costs a couple $1,000 and like either even if you had it saved up, it sets you back when you spend that because if another emergency comes up, then you don't have that savings anymore. It's just a bad cycle that can happen
Yeah.
because I just get
Oh yeah.
irritated every time I'm thinking about it of
No,
just
I
like
agree.
capitalism and like how much stuff costs and like if you don't have the money or you're trying to get on payment plans, they charge you more. If you have bad credit,
Hmm.
your interest is more. It just
Yeah,
the
yeah.
worst.
It's definitely a setup if you don't talk about it early. I feel like
Yeah.
it creates almost an irritating topic of conversation because it becomes so taboo beforehand
Yeah.
that now it's kind of like it's in your face. You can't run from it. And we need to
Yes.
have these type of conversations, but honestly, it becomes a tedious conversation because like I don't want to talk
Yeah.
about it in the first place. Like the debt, all the things, like I don't want to talk about those things.
Exactly, and I think that sometimes we brush off for too long, and then we're like, "Oh, this is like a way bigger problem than what I realized that it was going to become because I just tried to avoid it."
Oh yeah.
And what advice do you have actually transitioning to this of for millennials and Gen Z that are having these issues and are feeling like they can't afford life or they're in debt? Like, how does somebody that doesn't have a positive relationship with money or is in a lot of debt, how do they start today to like change that,
I first
given the
off,
world
yeah,
circumstances?
yeah.
The
I say find
caveat.
an accountability partner. Because we're not in this alone. At the end of the day, find somebody that you can talk to about money with, even if it's just your best friend who's also in the same struggle with you. Y'all can get out the mud together. It definitely takes sometimes two people to really find the solution. I literally feel like the little things matter. So if you guys are talking out, all right, I don't need to spend this money. Like, am I spending for emotional spending or am I spending
Yep.
just because? Those topics of just talking with a friend end up being things that can save you later on. Because if you're aware of how you're spending those or aware of your good habits and bad habits, that's how you can change them. Um, but yeah, outside of having an accountability partner, I also say that just creating a plan. So
Yeah.
even if you have to get the loan, if you have to go about certain things, because student loans like they exist for a reason. People want the education, but it's the plan to get out of that debt afterwards. So if you are ignoring the conversation and don't know what debt you're in, you'll never know how to get out. Um,
Yes.
yeah, so I definitely think just having those conversations, even the elements of just already being in debt, it's how you get out next.
Yeah.
It's creating that plan. So if you
Yeah.
feel like right now your job isn't going to cut it, have those conversations with the credit bureaus. Like let them know like you're at a limited situation right now. Um, they understand you're not alone. But those conversations, if they don't know that you're in a hardship, they will never have you give you leeway. So
Yeah.
just talking to the people like above the pay grade type thing actually matter. And
Yeah.
having I feel like I don't know the balls to say the least to actually have those
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah, and I agree because I always tell people like if you get a late fee or there's a charge or something, you can call them and ask them to take it off. I think people don't think that.
Mhm,
And it's also like already annoying that like you're in debt. So it's like another thing to do to call somebody and ask and talk about it. And usually like that first person you talk to is kind of like, okay, whatever, like it is what it is, like just pay the money. Like we don't want to hear your sob story. We don't want to hear whatever. And that's what like discourages people from like a lot of things because you actually ask for help and then somebody's telling you no. So you're like, what am I supposed to do here? And then it just keeps becoming
mhm,
more of an issue because you don't feel like anybody's helping. But if you do try to call up to like whoever is above, like you said, the pay grade, sometimes
mhm,
it does help. And most times it has. And sometimes I just like the late fees came because I genuinely just forgot to go log in and pay the thing. Cause I don't like doing automatic payments. I like going in myself and doing it and like seeing that it's coming out. Cause I'll forget if it's automatic for certain things. And I'll be like, what the heck? When did this come out? And what is this for?
Yeah, I agree. Even my brother, he's the same way. He'd rather see the physical, like, I need to know, like, all right, I paid them off. I physically did that. Instead of,
Yep.
I don't know if they took it out yet. Those like curiosities that kind of come in play,
Yeah.
and the overdrafts that kind of follow that too. So yeah, I agree.
That overdraft fees and bank fees make me so mad. Like a late fee, I can understand a
Hmm.
little more, but like overdraft, I don't have the money. So why are you charging me more money? Like I
Yeah,
don't have it. You
so
see,
true.
I don't have it. And you're charging me more. That
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a scam. I promise you. Um,
yeah.
but those are also calls you can make. So if you total up,
Yes.
like you had $100 worth of fees in a month, most time they'll bargain with you and be like, "Oh, okay, they'd probably take 80% off." But once
Yeah.
again, don't make those calls, they won't even have the thought process
Yes.
to think about you.
Yes. And I think why people don't, because I mean, myself included, sometimes I haven't called because I'm already irritated. Like, I'm just mad that you already did this, even though, like, I didn't mean to, like, miss it. Or, like, in the case of when I wasn't working, like, some things I wasn't paying rent on time because I
Mhm,
was unemployed at the time, waiting for unemployment and just trying to, like, figure out what was the bill I needed to prioritize before paying other stuff. And, like, some stuff just wasn't a priority at the moment
right,
because I had to work with the situation that I was in at the time.
mhm, yeah.
And
But
what
there's
I did
also
oh, go ahead.
people well, there's also just people, nonprofits that exist out there, programs that already exist to help out people who are in that state, because
Mhm.
there's so many people who kinda end up unaware of certain things until they hit, that there's different programs. If you look it up locally, that's usually where you can find like people who can either help write a check for you, and
Yeah.
or they can also talk to the right person for you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that it's hard for people to look up things like that though, because it's like you don't want to feel like you did something wrong or you don't want to feel like you're in a bad situation that even if you put yourself there, like you just feel shamed, I think, around money. And that's why I also feel like we should talk about money of like what somebody's salary like when I was looking for apartments I was always asking people how much is your rent and like I'm not asking it to be your business I'm trying to understand what is the range here because I
Yes.
hadn't had to pay for my own apartment. And then even for like that house, like I'd be asking my friends, like, how much is your mortgage? Like, how much was your house? Like, because if you don't know, you don't know. Like, I think about my students that are 16, 17, and they're like, I want to buy a car when I graduate. And I'm like, do you know how much a car costs? Because God forbid something happens to my car right now. I can't even afford a new car right now. So I know that you can't, but I can help you plan so that you can see what's realistic for you or
Hmm.
you can figure out how to make that income so that you can get a car and sustain it. I think sustaining things is the biggest piece when it comes to finances as well because you might be able to purchase something in the moment but like what if something breaks? What if something goes wrong? Like what if you're in
Hmm.
an accident, especially for cars? That makes me mad too that if something happens to your car in an accident, you still have to pay for that thing. Like
And then the insurance also rises because you got in an accident. Yeah, it's all of it. Hmm.
I'm just
Yeah,
yes.
I agree. Yeah, I am also a AU basketball coach, so that same age range is like, all right, so I same thing where scholarships. They think if they're full ride going on a sports scholarship, then they're good. They can pay for this and that, but reality sets in, and like, okay, half of that's going to your parents, half of that's going to books, and the other half's going to like a roof over your head. So where do you think the rest is going to come out? So the
Yeah.
realities of the adulting, I feel like, is wild and expensive. It's not
Yes.
cheap being an adult.
No, and I just don't think it was like this before. Like I really don't feel like it was. And I don't know like where the shift and change happened in things. Um, it's a lot of factors of one that jobs just don't pay enough. We're told to go to school, get degrees, and you'll get a good job, and that's just actually not always the case for many people. And then just in the climate that we're in now, like so many people have been laid off that it's difficult for them to find a new job. But one thing I think is better I guess if that's the word you want to like use for it now is that like if somebody's laid off or fired, I don't think it's really seen as a bad thing these days because it's happening so frequently that if your company laid people off and you're trying to apply for another job, they're not necessarily asking about that. Because I think that was something that worried people a lot when you're job searching.
Hmm.
But you can't control getting laid off. Like that's not your fault. And even if you were fired and you did something wrong, like it is what it is. Like you still need a job to live. You still need money to like be a productive citizen in this world. So how do we do this? How do we
I
do it?
agree. I agree. Yeah, and that's where I feel like if you have the conversations early on, those are like almost avoided in a sense of having the fear behind the finances
Yeah.
because you are okay. This is happening now. You're able to kind of get a get a hold of the situation and then go make the
Yeah.
plan and go versus sitting in it, wallowing in it, and trying to find other people who are also in the same situation and kind of let's get out together. But sometimes being ahead of it, being almost detached with emotions from the
Yeah.
financial piece allows that longevity to make more realistic. You become a little
Yeah.
more optimistic in that time frame when you take the
Exactly.
emotions out of the finances. But it's
Yeah.
hard.
Yes, it is. And I think that you also need to kind of reassess and replan and do what works for like your current situation because what you did at the beginning of this year might not be working for you by the end of the year or the middle of the year. And I had to like finally get myself together. Again, I'm the adult queen, but I'm not saying I do everything perfectly. I'm saying that we're going to talk about this together. We're going to share resources. We're going to just
Mhm,
figure out what works for you as a person. And I like was tracking my spending for January because I was like, okay, new year, let me get myself back on track. February, I haven't been tracking, but like I know what I've been spending. But as far as like my debt, like I do have credit card debt, I have student loans.
mhm,
Those are the only two things. Yeah, those are like the main two things because my car is thankfully paid off. I mean, I pay for my mortgage on my house, but I don't feel like that's debt. Yes, it is a loan, but like I have to
the
live
good debt
somewhere. So
concept.
I
Mhm,
finally wrote down all my bills, which I already had that, but then I also like printed out trackers for the credit cards and put like the amounts, and then I mapped out the payments, and then I mapped out like some of my bills are reoccurring on my credit card. So instead of using like, okay, I'm gonna get the phone bill taken on my credit card tomorrow, and like I'll wait to pay that off. I was like, no, like let me just already pay that amount on the day my phone bills due on the credit card. So like I automated that so that that's not like racking up because paying a bill on my credit card, I don't always go from like my debit account to pay it off right
mhm.
away, and that's also what's like making my credit card bill go up sometimes. So I finally got myself together and it was like, let me just pay this as each bill is going on there because I keep the bills on there so you can get the points, like your
Mhm.
credit card utilization, all that stuff. But I was like, I finally did it and I feel very proud. It also made me stay in the house because I wrote down like how much money I was gonna have left over from like that check for the next 2 weeks. And I was like, I'm gonna just stay in the house and that will be that.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's literally what happens when you look at everything over and see the full overview. You kind of realize, all right, well, one, I don't need to do things that already are spending the higher things that for fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, my nails haven't been done in a while. I literally have been finally painting my nails with the paint I already have. So certain things like that, I totally get that. But also, I feel like just because we have good debt, there's also bad debt that also
Yeah.
exists. But being aware of what's the good versus the
Exactly.
bad, it makes
Yeah.
so much difference.
And for the credit cards, I wrote out like the interest rate for each of them. I wrote out the due date, the amount, like I mentioned. And then even for my one student loan that's a private one, I only have one private student loan left. It only has like $3,000 left on it. But what's irritating is when you look at how much you took out versus how much you paid back, I'm like, these people are getting on my nerves, like my nerves, like because
The audacity.
and
Yeah.
I genuinely don't know like for student loans like how the students going to college now can be prepared better than we were, only because you either, in my opinion, have to start paying on these loans when you're in school, which is an option. You can do that, but I don't think it's the best option just because college is already a lot and taxing. So to worry about that at the same time, like it's just difficult if you're not working and a lot of
Yeah.
factors. But again, personal. So do what works for you. But that's like an option. Pay while you're already in school so that it's less when you get out. Or it's like you have to get a job that is just paying you more than enough for you to live and pay your bills and like live to just like do regular things and then take care of the loans. Because if you're leaving school with like 30, and that's on the low end, 30,000 up to 200,000, $300,000, how are you going to pay that off in your lifetime? Please let me know.
Yeah, and that's another piece of being ahead of it. So a lot of times, if you want to go to school before you get to high school. So like
Yeah.
those are things that kind of already in play. And I feel like it's time now to start talking about the fact that 529 accounts exist. Which
Yes.
um, and if you're like 12 years old, 14 years old, and you are knowing you want to go to college, those are times of like, I know you don't know 529 exists, but like as the parent, it's kind of like, all right, you got to have those conversations early on because you can get out of having it all on you. You can have compound interest helping you and
Yeah.
different things like that. But even outside of just the 529, I feel like it's also creating the concept of making sure your job is worth it after 4 years, and
Yeah.
and also that that job also can possibly pay back. So if you go to a larger university, or not university, but larger company, they have those payback your student
Yeah.
loans type things. So like there's perks if you're thinking about that early on. So that was
Yeah.
literally what I did. Every internship I had, they had like a large company. I asked those questions like, do you have tuition reimbursement? I want to know now.
Yeah.
Like if I'm going to come here at longevity, I want to know ahead of time. And half time they don't, and or that was a good internship, and I put it on my resume and I walked out. So
Yeah.
that was kind of you learn also on the fly, but yeah, 30 grand regardless is one of those things. It's kind of like to get ahead is literally writing scholarships now, creating
Yeah.
creating another source of the lane of getting the funds because it's
Yeah.
not just you don't have to be on Sally Mae's back.
And that's what, like, when I think about, like, for my car, like, my car was like 35,000 or something, and I paid that in 5 years, but it's because I have to pay like $500 a month. So it's like, yeah, it could be realistic or doable for a student loan, but you would have to be paying like hundreds of dollars every month that like just people don't have. Like,
Right.
so
Yeah.
what
Well,
is
my friend,
what?
she's been working at Target literally since she started college for that reason because they have a reimbursement
Oh,
program.
okay.
And so,
Target.
like, yeah, she's like, it's almost like her career is connected to that payback. So she
Yeah.
is prepared for, all right, she's in grad school now. So she's literally been there forever. And it's the piece of like, all right, she knows some things going to be covered. But the other piece, yeah, I got to call Sally Mae. I have to make this thing, but it's the plan to get out.
Yeah, exactly. Because
All
I
right.
don't think
So,
student
yeah.
loans are bad. You just have to be educated on what you're taking out and what you're doing, which I can't say that I necessarily was, but thankfully my loans like really weren't bad when I was leaving because I went to a state school and my master's degree was paid for. So I only paid for undergrad for the 4 years, and then I ended up becoming a resident assistant, so I didn't have to pay for my room for the last 2 years. So I do feel like my student loans could be paid off in my lifetime for sure. And I also saying it, I have to go back to do the public service loan forgiveness because I've worked at schools and nonprofits since I
Mhm.
graduated college and my master's degree. But I think mine could be paid off in my lifetime. I just honestly didn't prioritize figuring that out because I had to figure out like other bills and like
Yeah.
living and car and like moving and just like groceries. Again, of the whole topic that millennials and Gen Z have is like not that we don't want to work or that we're not sure how to plan, is that we don't have enough to plan
Hmm.
and pay and do everything that is being asked of us or required of us right now.
Yeah. And I feel like my hypothesis with that is just the fact that people who are in charge and are they forget of where things were at one point. And also the fact that so much has changed over just generational wise.
Yeah.
Generations are so unaware of current day standings of anything because they've been in that mortgage for so long. They've also been at that role for so long. They've only seen six figures come in. They can't even fathom
Yeah.
just enough type thing. So
Yeah.
that mindset also is like the creating that gap as a whole. Because I
Yeah.
yeah, because
And
I
that's
also
why
worked, yeah, throughout college, worked on campus, and they paid for my housing too. So
yeah.
it was one of those things kind of like I was hustling in the midst of doing it all. just to make sure I had a lower ticket at the end of the day. But
Yeah. And it's just so crazy to me though, because it's like I think that college doesn't have to be for everybody, but when you don't go to college, it's been harder for people to like figure out what they're trying to do or make more money. It's not impossible.
mhm,
Anything is possible, but it just is harder. But then it's like on the other side, going to college, like everybody's just upset because they're getting laid off. They're not getting paid enough. They can't pay their student loans. It's like, what do we do to fix this except for Joseph Robinette doing what he said he was going to do and forgiving these people's loans?
right, yeah. Honestly, at this point, I don't understand why college is still going up in price when realistically that's what's killing off a lot of people in their longevity of any plans. Because that's
Yeah.
like the good debt's kind of like, all right, sounds great, but that student loan can literally keep somebody from getting a house one day. Or
Yeah.
certain things, yeah, that's I feel like they don't even fathom of how it really affects the longevity of people. But because they aren't the person in charge, they don't have those concerns and worries. I'm like, I'm pretty sure half people who work at Sally Mae only work there because they're getting the gift.
No, honestly, and that's like another point too. Like talking to the people on the other line, I'm like, sir, ma'am, miss, them, they,
Mhm.
you have to like understand because also they probably get calls all the time of like people just complaining or ignoring. And I'm not gonna lie, I have definitely ignored all these letters little Moella keeps sending me. I'm gonna get it together again. I'm a work in progress, but I've definitely been ignoring them because I was like, I don't have time for this right now. Like,
Mhm.
please.
Yeah, and they always call it the most inconvenient times. And yeah, I feel like the scam is scamming regardless,
Yes.
because the requirement of having the degree for half these jobs now, a lot of people aren't even having the degree in this overhead of them. So why is that a requirement? So I agree.
Yeah. And I think that like the college students now, it's like what also has been difficult for them is because I thought about this just like a couple of weeks ago. I was like, wow, the people graduating this year from high school and college went through their 4 years of high school or college in a pandemic and like coming out of it. So it's like, or well, I mean, we're out of it, but like the world's different. So I feel like those students graduating high school now and
Mm,
graduating college are like at a disadvantage because they didn't get to do internships, the traditional internships. They
mm,
lost a lot of opportunities that could have afforded them money for school, for jobs, for like fellowships, for mentorship programs, whatever it was. There was a lot of funding and resources lost in those first 2 to 3 years. And then now, as we got to like 2023 was a quote unquote regular year, like trying to go back to like what we were doing. That's your senior year. Like you can't rush and try to do everything in that year. So how do you get the skills and things you need to then move yourself forward or even the knowledge because they were home, they're on the computer. Like it just
yeah,
this world's
that's
crazy.
I feel like the element because those are the my former Girl Scouts. They are the ones that they're literally senior year or they're their first year in grad school right now. So I've literally been with them through that whole element, and as they're like adulting, I help them answer those budgeting questions, help them answer all the things. But realistically, what's helped them kind of get where they are now with a calmer state of mind is having a good network with people because of
Yes.
like your network or your network is your network is real when it comes to adulting because that next person that you meet could easily be the CEO of whatever company. While
Yeah,
you're at the gym, you can literally make the connections that in a corporate setting that you couldn't make in the actual corporate setting. So it's
for
creating good
sure.
networks now for pretty much that generation because they literally went through things that we could never relate to. And I personally don't
Exactly.
want to relate to that.
No, I genuinely feel bad. Like I love what I do and I always have said that like even from undergrad, like seeing the professionals in undergrad and then me going into grad school and doing the roles of people that I saw and worked closely with in undergrad and just their disconnect from like what was going on with people currently going through certain things. I was like I just
Mhm,
never want to lose that disconnect, which is why I do what I do and I talk to so many different types of people and different generations because I have like my students that are Gen Z and younger and even like the we're not younger. Well, yeah, the younger millennials is still very different than like my millennial range, and then even like the older millennials. Like it's all very different in that one generation. So you have to think we're dealing with the boomers, Gen Z, Gen X, millennials. Too many people with too many experiences that don't want to come together. But I'm glad that I'm able to talk to different people and get their opinions and have an understanding of like why are things this way and try to figure out like where can we bridge the gap if at all, because some things just aren't going to change because they don't want to change,
Yeah,
but something has to give in this world, because
I agree. I
that was like a
also
whole rant. I don't even remember
no,
where
you're
I was
fine.
going. I hope it made sense because I just am getting internally frustrated still.
No, I'm right there with you because I also work with older generations with a nonprofit where it's pretty much merging the housing program or housing assistant program with budgeting. So they are required to have a budgeting meeting with me every month just so they can get their housing check assistance. And so with
Gotcha.
that, I talk to pretty much all generations in that element who just need the help. But the crazy part is the most related generation right now is our elders comparing to the um, generation that's really coming out of college right now because of the issues around um, the lack of knowledge that they had growing up. Both of them are literally sitting in the same area. They both have fixed
Yeah.
income as well. And because that fixed income is limiting them, they don't have that resource to get to the next piece. And there's so many people that also count out the elders and they count out the younger adults for literally the same reason. Their lack
Yeah.
of knowledge and or their lack of
It's literally
experience.
a full circle of life. Like that's another thing
Yeah.
that's always interesting to me. I feel like when you get older and like can't think of a better way to say it, but like near death, you know, the ending of your lifetime here
Hmm.
on this earth, you're reverting back to when you were a kid in a way, because it's like you're not keeping up with the technology, you're just not doing the same things that you were doing before. And then if I mean not what's the way to say it? My brain's processing is slower than me trying to say the words. Like if not if you're sick, but usually when you're getting older, somebody else has to take care of you, and it's
Yeah.
hard to allow somebody else to take care of you and do things for you because for this most of your life you were doing everything yourself. So you're thinking
Hmm.
like baby to 18 to 20 you're getting cared for, then from 20 to 60, 70 you just
Right.
living your life, and then in those
Hmm.
last 10, 20 years you're like, oh, I gotta go back again, like I'm not doing this. And that's the biggest fight I feel like we hear with like grandparents or just like now our parents getting older, is like they're like, no, like I don't need somebody to do that for me, I don't want your help, like I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that.
Hmm. Yeah. I'm the baby of the family, so I definitely hear all of that. And I also remind them that okay, so when you're retiring, whose house you going to? Because it's not mine. I want you to have your own, and I want you to have the caregivers to go to your house or and be on your schedule. Right now, as the youngest, I ain't got started yet.
Feel like I'm trying to figure it out myself first. It's a crazy, crazy dynamic. But I still feel like that ties back to money because you need resources, you need to plan. But it's hard to plan when you're trying to deal with like the fire in front of you first and then figuring out other things. And the last question I want to ask you that pops into my head: do you feel that it is attainable for millennials and Gen Z to get to retirement?
Yes, absolutely. I started planning. The reason why I said 26 was because I started planning at
Yep.
26. Um, I was preparing for the life insurance, disability. Like I have all those things planned out for 45-year-old me because I want to be able to say I want to kick my feet up. I want to be closer to retirement at 45 than at 65 because 65
Hmm.
I should be. I want to chill out. I want to be able to do retirement things now, within the next decade. To be honest, but I know I have to work hard now to make that happen. So
Exactly.
it's a plan
And I
that's
think
in action.
for millennials, it's attainable because we started working earlier before the world went
Hmm.
haywire.
Yeah.
I think it's attainable for Gen Z with the proper knowledge and planning, but I think with like headlines just immediately saying like Gen Z millennials won't retire, like the world's going down, like we're losing money, this and
Yep.
that. Like I hear that and I'm not saying that's not true, but you have to figure out for yourself how do you reach that?
Hmm.
And in the event that for some reason, retirement, social security stuff goes haywire, you still have planned to some degree. And most jobs, at least all the jobs I've had, have offered retirement, 403Bs, 401k, stuff like
Hmm.
that. So that was from when I was 23. I've had that, and it helped me to buy my house.
Yep.
And if people start planning, I think it's attainable, but they need the knowledge. And it just goes back to, how do you get the knowledge, or how do you understand this if you
Yeah.
haven't seen people do it? If people aren't open to talking about it, like,
Yep. Come my way. I love
yes,
having these conversations,
yes,
because it literally takes a village to figure it all out. I have been in this realm of like helping everybody. Is the reason why I created my social media network, because I realized, oh, this is the same question I keep getting. Like, how do I do a budget? I can show you real simple. Like, your expenses, your income, what's remaining is how you play.
yep,
The expenses do not include your play. And
yes,
if they do, then that means that remaining money should be saved. And so those are things like I can pitch to you, but do you understand it?
yes,
And I I love the fact of breaking it down. So if you don't understand it, I love to break it down, because it definitely, everybody doesn't understand what assets are, or even
no,
401k. Like, those things are the reason why I'm building an app now, is because of
yes. I was
those.
about to ask you about
I
that.
was like, because I feel like there's so many elements in the financial world that is so unknown, but you have to start with something, and that's literally your own overview of your own finances.
Yep,
So yeah. But also, just to add to what you were talking about before, just the elders piece, I think we have to get to the point of reminding people who are in charge of making changes, why we need to vote and do all the things, because there is so many things that we can actually do that we're not even aware of right now. And it literally can be started with just talking to your elders and how they did things differently, or how they did
yeah.
things and how we can do it differently.
Yeah, and I definitely agree, because I think that, like, one thing about our elders and the time they grew up, from just like my family members and people I've met and spoken to, is that they had a different mindset of, like, we have to make it because we don't really have another option, and like we
Mhm.
have to work hard so we can get to what we want to do. I think that, like, for myself, I think things, they didn't feel easy because I still don't know a lot of things, but I had guidance which
Yeah.
was helpful to get me to where I'm at now. And I think Gen Z, like, has guidance, but again, it's the narrative of, like, this sucks, so let's just do nothing, versus this sucks, let's figure it out.
Mhm.
And that's why, again, for my stuff, it says like adulting is lit crossed out ghetto, but it's like adulting can be lit sometimes.
Yeah.
Adulting can be ghetto sometimes. But either way, we have to do it, and we have to figure it out. Like, you can
Mhm.
have a negative mindset for a little while, but you can't stay stuck there, because, like, this is your life. Like, you have to take control of your life.
Yeah.
So adulting is ghetto is a joke. It is serious sometimes that it's ghetto, but we can't just sit complaining and make the narrative that, like, adulting's so hard, so I'm gonna do nothing, or like adulting's so hard, so I'm gonna give up. Because if you
Mhm.
give up, you're gonna set yourself back pretty far. And nobody will be there to help you in more so the way of, like, if you give up on yourself, it's gonna be hard for other people to want to help you, or like give you resources and stuff, because they're not gonna know what to help you with, because they're not seeing you, like, take ownership over your own life, or want to display any type of initiative.
Mhm. Oh yeah. Yeah. It
What a
takes
good
all of those
conversation.
things. But yeah, it takes all of
Yeah.
it. It's a
And I
mindset thing.
still feel like all of this ties back to money, because, like, money is the number one driver in our lives, unfortunately, because that's how you have a roof over your head. That's how you're
Mhm.
able to get food. That's how you get clothes, healthcare. That's why we go to work. Like, if people had a choice, like, not many people would say they're going to work. So
It's
it's
true.
just frustrating that, like, money runs everything, but if you don't have access, you don't have resources, you don't have knowledge, it throws everything else off.
Yeah. Yeah. And then also just the fact that everybody deals with money. It's how you approach it as well as how it's going to be your outcome. It's definitely a psychology thing. So if you feel like
Yes.
you're scared of money, you will always be scared of money. If you feel like money is meant to come to you, it will also come to you. So those are things that it's power of the tongue as well. I stop saying I'm broke. I'll say I'm temporarily without funds because it's only temporary. I do not want to stay in that state. Um,
Yeah.
but
It
yeah,
really is a
I agree.
mindset thing, and that's why I say, like, it's fine to joke and say, like, adults in this ghetto, this and that, but, like, we gotta move forward. And we are, because I have this podcast, I have my business, I have people like you and other guests and stuff that come on and share their knowledge, and people are listening and they're getting like inspired or really like, okay, let me get myself together. So this was
Yeah. I was like, the next
great.
generation deserves to have an empathetic guidance at the end of the day.
Yes, because the way that we were guided was by like,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
Yeah.
empathetic. I'm gonna write that down. That is a good way to say it. That like they're having empathetic guidance, which I definitely agree with. We more had like tough love of like
Mhm.
pull it together, sink or swim, and like good luck.
I was like, that's the reason why everything's a quote now. I feel like because it was just something I feel like somebody read off of another book that they just applied it and did it again. We can break every curse that exists, and I definitely feel like we're the generation that's going to do it.
Yeah, no, I agree with that for sure. But this was amazing. Let everybody know where they can find you, and it will also be in our show notes. Um,
Yeah,
my head is spinning in like good thoughts and like, oh my god, like what do we do? How do we fix this? What is this gonna look like
yeah, baby
in
steps.
years to come?
Yeah, but
Um,
baby steps one would be also downloading the app that is coming.
yes,
Budgets
download
by
our app,
Joy.
everybody.
Yes, where literally we go over pretty much your actual psychology first, to understand who you are as a spender, and then we go into building your budget next. And so that's how actual app is laid out. So it goes off of psychology because I
And that's
understand
a
that
good
that is
approach. This is why this is your field and realm, because that's a very good approach because it's my I
yeah,
just
yeah.
I'm so excited. This is great.
Yeah, but I'm also a former Girl Scout leader. I'm a former nanny. I'm a former AU coach. So I understand the next generation deserves something. And so that's what my goal is creating this app for. Is like, if not for them, their parents to also get the education so they can also see it.
Yeah. And so let them know your social media, your website. Again, it will be in the show notes, but let the people know.
Yeah, so you can also find me at everything Budgets by Joy, and that's budgets plural with an S, and that's joy with an I, because I am different. I have an accounting
Period.
background, so I love educating those who don't understand. So yeah, you can find me TikTok to Instagram to YouTube. I'm everywhere. So I can't wait
We
to
love
add
that.
value to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much. This was amazing.